Okay. Hopefully it's recording. I'll be very upset if it isn't. Let me call roll real quick. Isa? Oh dear. Avery? Andrew? Lily? Emily? Isabel? Said it correct. Oh, keep going back and forth. Isa, Eric, Ella, Sydney, Jewel, Lars, Bentley, Alexis, Madeline. Okay, well, half of us are out of the seat. So, we don't have clapping. So we have, we finished more than technically where we hit today probably would put us closer to finish on Monday with a little bit. Or Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, a lot of days. So the bad news for those of us who aren't here, when we recorded, you'll miss what we're about to do, although I will have a recordings of it. But obviously, we come around and try to get feedback on where I think you might be meandering a little bit from best practices. How many people have ever worked with light charcoal and charcoal on black paper? The wishy-washy color pencil. You actually use white charcoal or white chalk and black paper. So none of us, except for sort of one of us, and definitely has actually worked with material. So I don't expect you to be excellent craftspeople when it comes to the dexterity, sophistication of the medium, but obviously all of the same principles that you've learned when it relates to black medium on white paper are applicable here. Things like making sure that you have a good range of value, making sure that the individual objects have ranges of value that are appropriate to their color, i.e. dark objects have a more limited range of value, light objects have a more limited range of value, but still a range of value. Obviously, middle gray objects, color objects have a different range of value than dark objects or light objects. And then when you get into reflective objects, which a lot of us have, you're going to have a very wide range of value because you have things like specular highlights, reflections. So you should have heard all of these concepts, at least expressed, if not the same verbiage used in observational drawing class, drawing one, and in life drawing, and in painting, taking painting or other 2D media contexts. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm going to broadcast my screen and I'm going to broadcast the photograph that I'm working from. It's probably better if you come close than maybe watch me actually doing it, because of course, watching it on the screen is not the same. But I'm broadcasting it here because I'm recording it. And I want to make sure that it looks like it's working. So come on over here.
Hi, Professor Wilson.
Hey, Andrew, how are you doing?
All right, sorry I'm a minute late or a few minutes late.
It's okay. I'll mark you as present. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So you can see my drawing on the left and the photograph I'm working from on the right, and then some little floating box that I don't need.
Yeah, I
So,
can see everything.
do you see the changes that were made to my drawing between the last time and this time? So what changes were made? To look better or worse? A lot better, right? Things feel more concrete, yes. More proportionately accurate. I noticed something when I was drawing this guy. His bottom was in line with the bottom of this thing, which meant what for him spatially? That they were in the same plane of space. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Not only is that wrong because he's farther back than he is, but he's also smaller in scale than he was. And I wanted that push of depth to happen and scale change as well as overlap and vertical placement, i.e. higher things are farther back, lower things are closer to us, all needed to be at play in order for that to read. And it's just better designed to have a more dynamic spatial relationship. I'm so glad that you guys are here. You can ask everybody, Lisa, I was crying, like I was weeping.
We got hungry. We were distracted by the express.
Oh, is it open now?
Yes. What is open?
Panda Express. Okay. I like rice. The best sushi ever. If you like sushi, that's the place to go. It's 30 minutes from here, but it's worth it.
Which one?
Rice,
I've been down.
yeah.
I like the revolving invader belt one.
Where's that?
A couple of them. Sure. I think the lead.
Oh,
It's not good, but it's fun.
oh, right. Well, this is just like, I mean, even their egg drop soup is like nectar of the gods. So good. So anyway, distraction. So I made some adjustments. You can see I also put in some fabric back there. You guys see that? I just kind of made it up. Loosely based on what I saw in those photographs and then loosely based on the experience. And then of course, you know, I'm lining this part of the fabric up with this part of the treasure chest, which is lined up with this part of the apple, which is leading us down into this moment of overlap, so forth and so on. So I made some other adjustments. And I also decided to just put the flower where they were. So I changed my mind. Well, it's not so bad. And they don't look so bad, right? I did put a flower up here, and I'm thinking I still might put a flower down here. One of the things that I was thinking about is there's a really strong triangle with the bones. Does everybody see that? And then to have like another kind of triangular relationship with the flowers. So it's like a triangle within a triangle within a triangle. That makes sense? So I hope Jewel is smiling for why I'm smiling, because discover as you go. Like it's don't think of it like coloring book mentality. It's not, the design is not there and you're limited to it. You should feel empowered and expectant that, you know, you have the ability to create within something that is tangibly existent in reality. Does that make sense? I mean, otherwise, we're just glorified photographs, right? Or photographer, cameras. We don't want to be that. That's dumb. That makes sense? Even photographers don't want to just take photographs. They want to create good designs with their photography. That makes sense? So anyway, the point that I was making is that I'm still designing, I'm still correcting. I'm specifying
I am doing some blending. You can see from the granularity of some of the aspects that there are areas that I haven't blended, right? So I'm not trying to hide the fact that this is a charcoal drawing. Sometimes if you blend and blend and blend, everything just becomes flat and it lacks depth and a sense of light and shadow on the one hand, and on the other hand, it lacks vitality because there's no sense of the author's hand in the work. That makes sense. And your hand is in large part where the vibe comes from, like the individual vibe of who you are as people, peeps. That makes sense? So, bet. I'm learning. All right. You should notice that one of these kids is not like the other. One of these kids just doesn't fit in. There's something that is different somewhere in this image. And it doesn't really have to do with shapes. And it has nothing to do with the relationship between the image that I've created and the image in the photograph. It has to do with something more formal, maybe material.
It looks like there's something behind the little chest. Like you
Behind
added
the what?
the behind the box, like the like on the back left of it, there's something different there. I can't tell what it is.
Why is this not moving? Here?
Yeah.
Yeah. That was weird. Right, so people watch for me if that screen goes off, because sometimes it has a habit. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Anybody else? It's very subtle. Timmy, can you go turn off the lights for me? No? Okay. No, it's okay. It's very subtle. What do you notice is starting to happen as I do this? You guys see how just by adding those little accents of dark, that it really starts to like, when you can see it there, yes? It really starts to like punch up the dimensionality of things. Which really tells you something about what? the paper. It's pretty weak when it comes to value, yes? And do you notice that I'm like kind of using the chalk to not only punctuate, I guess is the right word. Think of it like dotting I's and crossing T's. That's not helping me at all, is it? But I'm also like, am I just drawing like lines around the edges? Huh? What am I doing if I'm not drawing lines around the edges? Hmm? Well, I am creating depth, but I'm doing it tonally. Does that make sense to everybody? Like I'm just doing little tiny tertiary dots and crosses on my letters in order to give a wider range of value. Do I need to blend? Does it look like I need to blend? And go in order to make everything look smooth. Now I could in some areas, and I probably will once I kind of do this whole layer. But selective. Does that make sense? Because again, I don't want to get rid of it all. So I want to push this forward. Let's see, that's pretty, it is kind of light at the top. So I'm going to kind of haze. And then as I push behind that thing, I'm going to push it again a little bit darker. And what does that do to that drapery and that treasure chest as I do that? Pushes them away from one another, pushes the treasure chest forward and it pulls the drapery back. And that first haze kind of shrunk the range of value that were in the drapery, because if it's black drapery, it probably is not going to have light gray lights, you know what I mean? So I need to push it back. Now, if I want, I could come in here and do something like that, which will kind of smooth it out. And then if I want to come back and deepen, oh, that shadow's horrible. The folds again, I can like reassert the folds. And touch to kind of resolve that. But you notice how we assume that these lines are still going behind this shape, even though they just trickle out and their edges become very soft. That makes sense to everybody? You see how the space is like really deep in that area right now compared to say over here or over here. So I just would apply that same procedure into the other areas of the composition. That follow? Is that treasure chest light? Are these two things equal in value in the photograph? No, they're not. So again, I might do something like this. Does that help to separate their value and make that treasure chest look a little bit darker? That makes sense. Now, did you see what happened to my little skull when I did that? What happened? A mark went in. Bad. It's ruined. My skull is totally ruined. I might as well just rip it up, right? No. Where is this space and this object relative to this object? It's behind. So when I did that, I was doing two things. Number one, I was darkening, refining the edge, and pushing it back. Like if I end those strokes right up against the edge of that skull, are they behind it? No. You in my painting class are like, yeah, Professor Wilson, you said this 1,000 times. But it's an important thing to understand, yes? So now I can come back and pull that in front. And what's cool about that is it mixes a little bit with the tone that I pulled over and gives me a half tone. Does that make sense? Now, if I want to brighten it up, like, I mean, it's not bad. Like, it doesn't look bad, does it? No, but let's say I wanted to brighten it up a little bit. A hint. Really freaking me out. Since we're working with a medium that's very dusty and like smudgy, right? Sometimes I like to have like a piece of paper or yeah, a piece of paper or a napkin like this. So now let's say I want to brighten that up. So what's happened is you've got, layers here that are on top of one another. So of course, that dark is going to infiltrate the white and it's going to create that gray. And if I don't want it, or if I want to put like a little highlight along the edge, I can actually erase back like so. You following me? And then I can come back and notice I'm resting my hand on this. And the white won't blend. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. So if you find that you're like putting down charcoal, putting down chalk or whatever, and it's not giving you black or white, then you might need to kind of agitate that surface and pull some of the excess layers off in order to get that one back then. That makes sense. But like that bird skull, that dog skull, that turtle skull, it's not white. There's very little pure white in it. Does that make sense? So you'll notice like in the dog skull itself, I'm coming in and on top of those, what I think of as white areas, I'm putting smaller strokes, not just coloring it in like like it's a coloring book. And those smaller strokes on top are going to make it more luminous, more like an irregular organic surface that's catching light because it's bumped. Does that make sense? How much blending have I done? So you need to ask yourself, how much blending am I doing and why? I can't tell you how many times I watch a student, I'll come around, I'll be like, so excited, they're doing so well. They're doing it exactly, it looks so good. And then I'll come around and they're like, and it's like, oh, so like efficiency. Be brave, put down the strokes, don't judge them until everything's like there. And then step back and say, where should I selectively blend? Because if you overblend, it becomes what? Muddy. Red mud. That makes sense. So yeah. But even some of these areas, like where, like in this tortoise shell, if I want this to kind of go back in space, I might need to pull some of that background on top of the edge, not against against the edge, even when you're working with tone, is like outlining things. And there's no outlines in that reference image, nor in reality. Does it look like there's like text in the book that I'm drawing? Yeah. Do I need to sit there and write words? Can you see words from here? No. Don't, unless it's like very big graphic words in your image, which I don't think anybody has. If you do, it'll be relatively easy to do those. It's an impossible task to do. If you look at Vanitas paintings that have open books in them, it's just like brushstrokes. The viewer is like, you want the viewer, there's mystery in like, okay, how many people have been to the museum and seen a realistic painting? How many people have looked at the realistic painting up close and said, how did they make it look so realistic? It's brushstrokes. You follow what I mean? So you're seeing it from far away and it's like, wow, that's really convincing. And then you get up close and you're like, wow, that was really convincing. Until I saw it up close. But you're not like, bleh. You're like, cool. How did they do that? Does that make sense? A lot of this. So you put down your, and then you step back. If you're up against this thing all the time, you're not taking on the role of the viewer. The role of the viewer is distance. And if you're always up close when you're making, you're not putting yourself in the viewer's shoes. You have to see it far away. And practically speaking, you're fooling yourself into thinking it looks bad when it actually doesn't look bad. You're undoing all of your good work because you're not stepping back. Makes sense. Cindy, can you hit the lights for me? Isabel made a really big mistake when Isabel decided, I'm going to sit next to Professor Winston. So what would your thoughts be on Isabel's image so far? And we're not looking at the image that Isabel is working on, right? We're just judging the image as it is. And again, put yourself in the viewer's shoes. When you go to the museum, do you see the still life that they were working from? No, you're just judging the painting and it looks right. So you should be able to look at this and say, Isabel needs to, this drawing needs what? We don't even have to discuss Isabel's, the drawing. What does this drawing need? It needs a background. First and foremost, before you do anything else, decide what's going on in the background. And you know whether you put drapery there or not, or just a channel of light, it needs to be a restricted range of background. It's a very subtle white and then maybe some black in there. Because it's time to start integrating black into your image as I was doing in mine. What looks really resolved right now? Or closer to resolved? The Rubik's Cube, the perfume bottle. I really like the perfume bottle. The Rubik's Cube, my concern about the Rubik's Cube, well, I don't know, does the Rubik's Cube have black around the individual colors? Okay. I was nervous about the outline, but it'll probably take care of itself as you move forward. But they won't just be solid, right? Even if it's black, there'll be some subtle variation in them. So putting smaller strokes within those black lines that you have will make it look like, because we're moving on, well, they erased it, to the tertiary information. The flower looks very flat. Yes, so that would be another area that I would work. I think that the texture and the shape is good, It's just the valve. And that's like a cassette player up on top. What is that? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Oh, I see, like that, all the way, or, yeah, gotcha. And is that a transparent glass?
It's a good dark.
White outlines can be as destructive as black. And are they all sitting on a book? Yeah, I like the pages of. Good, but I would definitely deal first with this space and with this. We're gonna go through this really quick. Andrew, get ready to share yours as well. I'll let you know when, just kind of move yourself towards that possibility. All right, what about this one? Is there some stuff going on in the background? Yeah, there's like a vignette. I think that the space to the right is probably a little oppressively dark, but if you add some black to that continuum, it can open up that space a lot. Don't just cover it all with black. And that's another thing. So this project and the next project we're working on blue-gray paper. Thank you, Emily. You're still doing work even though you're not holding the camera. You don't want to cover up all the paper, like you want, otherwise why draw on black paper? You want to exploit the nature of the tone of that paper. And if you cover it all up, you won't. And in our next drawing, we're drawing on a blue-gray paper. We want to let some of that shine. I think the doll is really looking good. And the negative space, positive space relationship with the doll, I think really looks like it's holding together. So that concept of figure ground, some artists call it push-pull, like in some places the ground is on top of the edge of the figure, in front of the figure. In some places the figure is on top of the ground. There's like a knitting in where you're pushing and pulling the background in front of and behind the figure. And it feels like you're doing. The thing that she's sitting on feels very much behind in the process. It feels still very gestural. You guys see that? I think all the little objects, including the watch and the book, are on their way. And I think once we integrate some of the black charcoal into there, they'll be more resolved. Drop shadows are always a help underneath the objects. Those crevice shadows that where the objects are sitting on top of the surface, I think will help. I'm concerned about the skull. And anybody guess what? I love your shirt. Princess Bride. Why am I concerned about the skull? It's too light. Like you've really pressed that white charcoal in there. Does that make sense? And you're going to have to erase in order to get lighter highlights, which I know is frustrating, but it just happens, you know, like you clot the paper because, you know, you can only go so, you can only do so many layers of pastel on top of pastel before it becomes clotted and then it just gets muddy, right? So in order to get lighter, sometimes you have to erase darker to reveal the page to get the tooth you need to it. Does that make sense, everybody? Right. I see all the Dungeons and Dragons dice in there. You play Dungeons and Dragons? But you have dice? Oh. All right, what about this one? Where does this one need to go? Background. I agree. I agree. So when you're putting down like in the front of the skull is like a box. So you've got the front plane and the side plane. Right? The side plane in the photograph is beautifully shadowed. Right? So the whole front face needs to be lighter. So do a veil. When I say a veil, that means not like a hard, opaque, grinding that stuff in. just build it up, veils, don't blend, right? Then you can selectively blend and then put really strong highlights where the lightest, whitest, brightest things need to be. Does that make sense? But yeah. This still feels like very early in the process. And like the flute, for instance, needs some more light in it. I think down here is looking okay, but these still it still feels a little too gestural. I just want you to concretize it. When I say concretize, that means make them clearer and more focused and more resolved. This is still very primary. We need some of the secondary values to be clearer and even pushing into some of the tertiary types of values and shapes. Do you guys understand what I mean by primary, secondary, and tertiary? So primary would be where this is now. Secondary would be distinguishing the strong front plane from the side plane. And then tertiary would be the tiny little highlights and crevices and pushes of dark and things like that. Does that make sense? Thank you. All right, Eric. Is the first Scream your favorite Scream movie?
I like the first Scream of all of them, yes, but not my first favorite.
Classic.
It's-
All right, what about Eric? So one of the problems that Eric has, well, first of all, let's congratulate Eric on the back being dealt with, so yay. What is this trapezoidal shape behind everything, Eric?
That's the table.
The edge of the table going back in space, gotcha. Why is that side light and that side dark? The right side light and the left side dark?
It's a white table.
So you just haven't filled in the left side of the table.
Yeah.
Over here. Yeah. So, like, do you see how you can see the brush strokes of white in the book right there? That probably means it's too plotted at this stage. So you're probably gonna have to pull some of that off in order to get some sense that there's lighting in there, and like I was doing in mine, you know what I mean? Like the borders around those central rectangles of darker tone or stripes is gonna give you the sense of a margin with text in it. Now, but my main concern is the mask. What color is the mask? It's black. And I'm very sympathetic to what the artist is struggling. Because you're trying to work out the proportions of the shape by doing what? The artist is trying to work out the proportions of the shape by doing what? Outline. Outlining is helpful in the initial stages. But just like a black on white drawing, it's best if you keep it light. And then overcome it, which you can if you keep it light, by inserting tone and by working figure ground at the same time. What's behind me, what's in front. Are you following me? If you overemphasize the contours using line, it makes tone that much harder. Does that make sense? Because then you're having to, in some cases, overemphasize the tone in order to make the line go away. Does that make sense? Like, I can't tell you how many beginning drawing students, they draw a dark outline around something that's white. And then they have to push the shadow darker than they would want to because they can't erase the line enough. Does that make sense? Billy, does that make sense? So just be careful. Good news is we have a solution. We can erase some of it, we can inject tone into it, and think of it like a puzzle. These are shapes of tone that you're finding the missing puzzle pieces. That will eventually overcome. And the flower as an intricate shape is kind of the same problem. Or will be the same problem. I'm not just speaking with you, I'm speaking with everybody. Flowers are hard. The good news about flowers, though, is that they're very organic. So as long as you make it flower-like, you don't have to worry about the proportions being identical, as long as the tones and the shapes are kind of a cousin of the flower. That makes sense? See your image. Are they something or someone's?
I don't think so.
All right, good news. Bentley has some background stuff going on. It's nice and loose, yes. Any contour lines that I see, like especially in the little lamb down there and on our 70s friend in the top right, those feel light enough to overcome, right? Any thoughts for Bentley right now, or does it feel fairly where it needs to be? The drawing. So the main thing that I would say is when you're putting in stuff like this, whether you're inventing it or whether you're looking at a resource and you're using that resource, go ahead and pull them over the objects so that they don't feel like they're like, look, you know, because that's not going to happen. That makes sense. This is another argument for pulling things on top of things that are in front and then pulling the things that are in front on top. And think about the edge of the page that way too. Don't draw up to the edge. Draw outside of the edge of the page. Does that make sense? Even if you only go over the object that's in front like an inch, 1/8 of an inch, it's still going to read to the viewer that that stroke that you made didn't hesitate once it got to the edge. The viewer can sense hesitation. The viewer can see when you're filling in around them. Because you are. The viewer is smart. Don't realize they're smart, but they are. That makes sense. One other thing compositionally I would worry about right here. You guys see how that shell is like pressed right up against that edge? If there's only about that much space, I would just push things over just a little bit, open up. To me, if you're going to avoid the edge but be close to the edge, you need to be at least an inch away. Does that make sense? Like in mine, I'm also worried about something else in mine. It may be because there's this here, the clip, but I'm feeling like the bird's nose is too close to the edge of the page. I also don't like that it's pointing to the corner. So I'm really considering making a major shift in its location. I might push it back a little, just to open up that space. When you have things touching the edge of the page, why is that a bad thing? Or close to the edge? Yes, it leaves the eye outside the page. It also destroys the window effect. So if you have some, it's just like two things, like my turtle shell, you know, being too lined up with this. If you have something touching the edge of the page, all of a sudden the viewer doesn't see the edge of the page as this invisible thing that everything is behind. It pushes the edge of the page forward and accentuates it. It flattens space, if you will. That's why either definitively going off the page or having some breathing room is a better strategy. Because from a distance, if it's this close, the viewer just assumes that it's touching. Does that look? That make sense? And, you know, I made some major additions and subtractions. So I don't think it's gonna cause you too many problems to move some stuff. But, okay. Your work. So go ahead and get your work as well. My battery's gonna die. I don't understand that because it's plugged up. Shouldn't it be charging, Raymond? No. Hurry up. Okay, I don't know. Let's move. That's the ones you guys are drawing. What do we think of what's happening now? I'm really drawn to the skull. It feels a little bit ahead of everything else. Obviously the background. I just think some secondary tones in the flowers would have made the flowers feel more like the skull. Does that make sense? Right now, it feels like this kind of amorphous thing. So if I saw more of the individual large shapes within that, or smaller shapes within that larger shape, not necessarily the smaller shapes within the smaller shapes that are in the larger shape, but those medial shapes that are within the large would have helped to catch it up to the skull. That makes sense there. But the skull convinces me that you're capable. I think there's some good stuff happening here and here. Starting to happen here and here. But there's a lot of areas that are still a little too linear into the back. So I'm going to say this, but I don't want you to think that I'm saying it to you because I could just as easily say it to some of our other friends. You got to keep like in step with the project so that I can help you with the next phase. If you're catching up in the first phase to the second phase, then I can help you with the second phase. Does that make sense? I'm not as hawkish about that right now. But I will become much more so as you come to know. One of the reasons why I may spend a little more time in the beginning and less time as we move through everybody is because I'll start repeating myself. We should be able to like by, what do you call it? Association, you know. When you're watching me critique others, and I saw Lily as I was critiquing, going to your easel and doing like, what is he gonna say to me? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah,
Oh,
so tired.
okay. You need to sleep more. You're always tired.
Correct.
You need to sleep. All right, what do we think of Issa's work? Is this background here or is this an object? Why do I see like a grid? Okay, it looks like a grid back here. It's kind of interesting. I think this part looks really good. Yeah, and this guy's starting to be a little teapot short and stout. Spout. Handle. Camera's looking like a camera. Probably, you know, pull some of our effort here. This is the strap of the candle, camera. So just dealing more with the background, I think will help. Are you guys excited to start to put in the black? I feel like that's gonna empower you a little bit. And by the way, you know, something I didn't demonstrate is utilizing the smaller charcoal pencils to do even finer. Jules, if anybody saw some missing charcoal pencils, Jules misses charcoal pencils. They left behind the rest. So, yeah. Who are we missing? Emily, Lily, and. Okay, I'm gonna play a slightly different game now. Alexis. Take your own. What, based on our previous conversation, do you see problematic? And Andrew.
Linda?
Now, you did start dealing with the background, so that's good news. Flowers starting a little bit. I'm concerned about clotting in the skull. Anybody else? I mean, you're really trying to get it solid. You don't want it soft. Solid is coloring. Does that make sense? So we're not trying to create flat color, we're trying to create dimensionality. So that's why kind of building up slowly between the middle values to the highlights and the black darks is the best way to work. So you're restraining yourself with the expectation that someday my white and black will come. That makes sense? So it's adjusting. What am I doing at this moment? What part of the process am I in? And am I speeding ahead and making trouble for myself? Because I'm anticipating instead of taking care of what needs to be taken care of now. That makes sense, everybody? Yeah, like like this is so beautiful. The details here. But are they there too soon? Like whenever you're dealing with texture, you always want to deal with the underlying value as if that is a smooth object first, and then add the smaller tertiary textures on top. So like when people are drawing here, they want to go spaghetti action. And it's like, no, look at how, the top is light and there's two, I'm looking at Sydney's hair, there's two kind of paisley-like shapes in the way that the hair is pulled to the side. And then there's a stripe that's very large running down this side, and this side is mostly dark. And all that's done before I start doing these individual gathering folds of hair. Does that make sense? That's like the last thing. It's not important at this stage. Does that make sense? Lily, bring yours over. Name is what?
Huh?
Um, Anybody remember? So what does Lily need to? Well, background. What else? Are the grapes green or purple?
They're purple.
So I think you push too hard, like many people. It's too cloudy. So the light in dark grapes is very minimal. Like there's just little dots of light, and even grapes, unless they're wet, they're not that reflective. Like it's a dull, light gray specular highlight, not like the specular highlight you see in Bentley's nose. Does that make sense? Because they're not highly reflective. So if I did that with my grapes, I would probably erase back. May I demonstrate something? So I might use my kneaded eraser. Let's see if it works. Is that helping? at all? Yeah. And then when I get into my dark, I'd put little small accents. Kind of at the edge of where one grape is overlapping the next. You guys see how much more volumetric they're becoming? And then, once I'd kind of blended that in and worked on that, then I might come back. And I wouldn't actually push that hard. And I call it touch blending. I don't go whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I just kind of like pat it, and that blends it enough to kind of give it smoothness. Yes, see? Yes. Then I might come in and highlight. That makes sense to everybody? Which would describe what I was doing. Which would be more like what I was doing. Yes. Follow what I mean? That makes sense? Like, the more you try to control it, the worse it's gonna get, the stiffer. And the more miserable you will be, because you're terrified. You're trying to control it, it's not working. Does that make sense to everybody? So, you have to loosen up. I've been working 35 years trying to loosen up. And I just feel like I'm starting to feel a little bit nearer to that. Yours. Of course, everything else in my life is fine. But it's a good release from that. Do you hear that Cracker Barrel relented?
Did they?
Yes.
Oh, rejoice.
I find it, we had two great conversations in my first year experience, that whole saga. And it just, to me, it's so interesting. It's just sociologically, culturally, it's just fascinating. All right. What do we think of the M here? Of this drawing, sorry. That's the foxtail over there. Or whatever, coyote. I really like the book. I feel like you've worked very hard to make that book or that box beautiful. Sorry. Is it a book or a box?
It's a matchbox.
It's a
Or,
matchbox. Cigar box.
cigar, yes.
I just think I would leave it alone because it's racing ahead of everybody else and distribute your efforts to resolve some of the other areas a little bit more. The good news is the whole thing feels pretty equal and thoughtfully approached everywhere in the drawing, except for that cigar box, which is racing or several steps ahead. So really try to think about how you can bring the whole drawing. I'd really like to Photoshop it. I'm going to apply this kind of effort to the whole. Now I'm going to do the next thing. Apply this type of effort to the whole. I'm going to do the next thing, as opposed to, you know, everything coming up like a city at different heights. Does that make sense? I like the background and the kind of atmospheric quality there. I
The
can see
shadow on the
grapes.
right.
Say what?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt. I was just saying the shadow on the right side looks pretty cool. How she's got it like next to the, I guess, the box or the book.
You're
Like
talking about
over
the
to
shadow
the right.
here?
Yeah. Yeah, like the one over to the right a little bit more is pretty cool. It's resolved. Yeah,
You're talking about this shadow right here?
yeah,
It looks like a cash shadow.
yeah, that's
Is
what I
it
was
pretty
trying.
close to a wall?
Yeah,
Yeah.
correct.
What is this object? Is that a flower?
Yeah, that's fine.
Dead flowers. But that I think is a pretty good way of dealing with grapes, just smudges of kind of a middle tone that you can then resolve, as opposed to pressing too hard and trying to flatten them. Well, I mean, I know you're not trying to flatten them out. I'm talking to people generally, skulls, grapes, it's all the same thing, right? Doesn't matter what you're doing. Think of it like a ghost that's gradually coming into existence. I think a lot of you are like, ghost, finished. You know what I mean? Like you're putting the cart before the horse. I'm mixing all kinds of metaphors, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Yes? And then Andrew, get ready, because there's one more in person, and then it's you. It's you, baby, it's you. How'd the mural opening go, Avery?
Oh, it went. Yeah, the bird came,
Yeah, I heard.
free food. I left pretty quickly.
Not big on socializing.
No, I just wanted to go home and go to the gym and take a nap.
Right, what do we think about Avery's? Does anything feel like it's racing ahead of anything else? No, it feels very well balanced. There is one thing that's waiting. And we're full circle. So we need to figure out what's going on. One thing I will say that I'm very appreciative of in this particular drawing is the torso. You guys see the female torso right here? So notice how Avery has this very light, tentative gestural line and how loose it is. Like it's not overly like strong. And it's just enough to permit the artist to see that this is separate from the background. Are you following me? But still maintain the darkness within the figure, because the figure is a dark figure. If you saw the photograph or the object that Avery was working from, it was a black or dark brown glazed ceramic torso. So how do you put a dark object from the dark background? Probably some highlights along the edge, but there's going to be some areas where you've got that passage or passage from the figure into the ground. And, you know, because there's not a dark light outline, and I know that's a contradiction in terms, can't be a dark light, but you understand what I mean, a light, strong outline. I can come out here and just put a little smudge, a very light tone, and that line disappears. In other words, the artist has left themselves a looseness of edge, both in shape and focus, that permits that to happen in an efficient process, as opposed to, I went too light, I gotta erase now, or I gotta try to cover it up. You following me? So just breathe things into existence slowly. And it's like, if you've ever, how many people have used an old fashioned camera? The lens. And so when you're doing it, you're trying to focus, right? And there's a moment where everything's blurry, and then gradually you bring it into focus. Think of your drawing. Is it one part of it coming into focus, or everything within the field coming into focus? Everything in the field is coming into focus. Does that make sense? I'm trying to help you guys to be efficient and to avoid things that create diversions or frustrations or time sucks. Makes sense? All right. I'm going to shut this down. And then I'm going to pull up Andrew. Andrew, get ready to share your
Okay.
place. I gotta stop sharing mine. Come on now. Where is it?
I might be able to just hit share on mine and it will take over, maybe.
Oh, here it is. I got it. All right, try it now.
Okay. Hang on. All right. Can you see the screen?
I can.
All right. So I'm definitely a little bit slower than everybody else, but this is what I got.
You're wrong. As my dad used to say, wrong dog breath. You're wrong. You're suffering from the same thing that everybody else is suffering from, which is what? The background. You got to figure out what's going on in that background. But it looks like charcoal to me. Yes, convinced. Is your ground plane black or is it a dark gray?
It's like a dark gray. I think it's like, I don't know. It's, I don't know. I got it somewhere around here. It's, like this one. So I think it's like, I don't know. It's like slightly less black.
Okay, good. Because now you'll be able to go in and push into that. Is everything that you saw in my demonstration registering with you and how you're going to translate that into digital as far as introducing the black?
Yeah. I just need to probably finish doing more of the white first, but yeah, the black part made sense.
Well, and that brings me to kind of one last general point to everybody. Don't think of it as white. Think of it as light. When you say light, you're kind of tricking your brain into thinking, oh, pure, unadulterated, snow, white. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about using white as a medium to create dark grays, middle dark grays, middle grays, middle light grays, and then white. Because you got to have everything in the middle before you can have the poles of black and white. Does that make sense, Andrew?
Yes.
All right,
Sorry about that.
so we're working, people. So we work.
I did want to show you that like the whole like thing is just white.
What are you showing
Yeah.
me, Andrew?
Oh, sorry. I was just saying like like I was just showing that like all the color on there was just the white.
Right. Oh, I see. I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're removing the dark gray on here when you do that.
Do you want me to stop sharing now?
You can, that's fine. If you need to ask me a question, you can just share again.
Okay, thank you.
Was that critique helpful for you, Andrew, at home?
Yeah, it was, and I definitely got some thinking to do about like the background. I gotta figure out if I want to cloth or if I'm just gonna do like the wall that I've got, not just not have it like resolved as much.
Right. Well, I just, I appreciate that you're here. I just sometimes worry because you're not here that you're not getting as much as everybody else is, and I just want to make sure that you are. That makes sense?
I do have one question. I'll share again real quick. I thought maybe I could do like here, I'll just share it again. Hang on. Okay. I was wondering about the like this background here, if I made it like not obviously not as bright or shiny or anything like that, but just kind of have it barely in the background if that would work.
Yeah,
Just-
yeah, and like the further it goes away from your central still life, you could have it a little more detailed. And then as it goes behind the still life, could kind of get lost and disappear. That would be fine, Andrew.
Okay,
I
thank
like
you.
it. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.